96%. That's how much of everything alive on this planet was completely erased. Not slowly, not gradually, in a single pulse. And the most disturbing part? That wasn't even the worst one. Earth has done this 5 times. 5 complete biological wipeouts. 5 moments where the oceans turned toxic, the sky became poison, and life itself was pushed to the absolute edge of deletion. And right now, a 6th one has already started. Except this time, there's no asteroid to blame, no supervolcano, just one species. Join us and let's uncover the 5 resets that nearly deleted all life on Earth, and why the next one might be the most terrifying yet. Let's go.
Number 13. Trilobites. Picture a creature with the body of a crab, flattened like a leaf, covered in armored plates, with compound eyes that could see in every direction simultaneously. That was the trilobite, the undisputed ruler of Earth's oceans for over 270 million years. To put that in perspective, dinosaurs dominated this planet for 165 million years, and we still treat them like legends. Trilobites lasted almost twice as long. They were the first complex animals on Earth with functioning eyes. They survived volcanic winters, shifting continents, and ocean chemistry changes that would kill every living thing on the planet today. And then, 443 million years ago, Earth hit the delete button on all of it. A supercontinent called Gondwana drifted directly over the South Pole. The result was an ice age so violent that the oceans, where virtually all life existed, dropped by up to 300 feet. Entire coastal ecosystems simply rose out of the water and died in open air. Deep ocean currents stopped. Oxygen in the water vanished. In less than 1 million years, the equivalent of 1 single second on Earth's geological clock, 85% of all marine species were permanently erased. The trilobites survived, but as a shadow of what they once were. That was reset number 1. Reset number 2 came with a weapon nobody saw coming.
Number 12. Devonian coral reefs. Before any rainforest, before any jungle, before any ecosystem you've ever heard of, the coral reefs of the Devonian period were the most complex, biodiverse structures that had ever existed on this planet. Imagine an underwater city stretching across thousands of miles, built over millions of years, packed with creatures so alien they don't resemble anything alive today. Giant sea scorpions the size of a human, armored fish with skulls like tanks, reefs so massive they dwarfed anything on Earth right now. Then, about 372 million years ago, that entire world began to die. Not all at once, in waves. The first wave hit and the reefs started bleaching. The second wave hit and the oxygen in the water dropped. The third wave hit and the sea turned into a suffocating, low-oxygen death zone. The killer wasn't a volcano or an asteroid. It was trees. The first forests on land were spreading across the continents and dumping colossal amounts of organic material into the ocean. That material rotted. The rotting consumed all the oxygen. The reefs collapsed. The corals were nearly driven to total extinction. By the end, 75.
Only 1% of people know the dark truth behind what we are about to show you next. If you want to be part of the few who actually know what's happening in the world, subscribe and leave a like right now. Done? Look at this.
Number 11. Dunkleosteus. It was 30 feet long. It had no teeth. It didn't need them. Dunkleosteus terrelli, the apex predator of the Devonian seas, had bone blades instead of teeth. Self-sharpening bone blades that could generate a bite force of 8,000 pounds per square inch, making it one of the most powerful bites of any creature in Earth's history. To put that in scale, a great white shark bites at around 4,000 psi. Dunkleosteus hit twice that. It was essentially a swimming tank with a guillotine for a mouth, and it ruled the oceans for millions of years, completely unchallenged.
Its skull alone was so thick and dense that it's one of the best preserved fossils of its era, because practically nothing could damage it. Dunkleosteus didn't die in a fight. It didn't get out-competed. It got deleted by an ocean that slowly stopped having enough oxygen to breathe. As the Devonian extinction dragged on across tens of millions of years, the seas that Dunkleosteus called home became increasingly hostile, warmer, more acidic, stripped of oxygen. And a creature built for dominance, not adaptability, had no answer for that. The most powerful predator of its age was suffocated by a dying ocean. Which raises a question that's going to get increasingly uncomfortable as this list goes on. What happens to the dominant species when the planet decides to reset itself?
Number 10. Siberian traps. Here's a number that's almost impossible to process. 3 million square kilometers of lava. That's the area of the entire Indian subcontinent, buried under molten rock. That's what the Siberian traps were. Not a volcano, not an eruption, a planetary wound. About 252 million years ago, the crust of the Earth cracked open across what is now Siberia. And for nearly 1 million years, lava just kept pouring out. But the lava wasn't the real killer. The lava was just the delivery system. What the eruptions were actually injecting into the atmosphere was CO2, methane, and sulfur compounds in quantities so enormous that the entire chemistry of the planet shifted almost overnight. The oceans absorbed the carbon and turned acidic, dissolving the shells of marine creatures while they were still alive. The water lost its oxygen. Hydrogen sulfide, a gas so toxic it shuts down the nervous system on contact, started seeping up from the seafloor. On land, the atmosphere thickened with greenhouse gases, and the global temperature spiked so fast that most species had zero time to adapt. Picture Earth running a fever of 10 to 15 degrees Celsius above normal, with no way to bring it down. That fever was about to trigger the single most catastrophic event in the history of life on this planet. 96%. Say it out loud. 96% of every species alive on Earth, gone. That's what the Permian mass extinction did 252 million years ago. Scientists don't call it the Great Dying as a dramatic choice. They call it that because there is genuinely no other accurate way to describe what happened. In the oceans, it wasn't just a die-off, it was near total silence. The seafloor turned into a dead zone. What had been thriving coral reefs, packed with life, became empty, acidic water with almost no oxygen and clouds of toxic hydrogen sulfide rising from the sediment below. Any creature that couldn't immediately escape to cooler, deeper water didn't survive. On land, it wasn't much better. 70% of all vertebrate species were wiped out. The mammal-like reptiles that had dominated the continents, the synaxids, the direct ancestors of every mammal alive today, including you, were nearly eliminated entirely. One small group of burrowing survivors called cynodonts made it through by hiding underground in the toxic, overheated world above them. If those cynodonts had gone extinct that day, there would be no mammals, no primates, no humans. Everything you are is the biological inheritance of a group of desperate creatures hiding in the dirt while the world above them burned. The planet took 10 million years to recover, and just when it finally did, the next reset was already being prepared.
Number 8. Lystrosaurus. When 96% of life on Earth was deleted, one animal inherited the wreckage. Lystrosaurus, a pig-sized, tusked, barrel-bodied herbivore that looked like someone tried to combine a cow with a turtle, became the most successful land vertebrate in Earth's history almost overnight. Right after the Great Dying, Lystrosaurus made up an estimated 95% of all land vertebrates on the planet. Think about what that means. Every field, every plain, every piece of surviving land on Earth crawling with essentially one animal. Scientists call it a disaster taxon, a species so adaptable, so resistant to bad conditions that it thrives in the ruins left by catastrophe.
Lystrosaurus could breathe in low oxygen air. It could eat almost anything. It could survive extreme heat and cold. It was the perfect survivor for a broken planet. But here's what makes Lystrosaurus genuinely disturbing rather than inspiring. A world dominated 95% by one species isn't a healthy world. It's a symptom. It's what Earth looks like after a reset, an ecological flatline where diversity has been destroyed and one opportunistic survivor fills the vacuum. Some scientists studying current biodiversity loss have started using a very uncomfortable word to describe what's happening to Earth's ecosystems right now. That word is Lystrosaurus effect, and we'll get back to that before this list ends.
Number 7. Camp Lava Flow Basalt. Just when life had clawed its way back from the Great Dying, the planet cracked open again. About 201 million years ago, the supercontinent Pangaea began tearing itself apart. The geological rift that would eventually become the Atlantic Ocean was forming, and the process of its birth was apocalyptic. The Central Atlantic Magmatic Province, or CAMP, was the result. A volcanic event so large that lava covered an area between 7 and 11 million square kilometers. Bigger than the entire United States, Canada, and Mexico combined, buried under basalt. The eruptions ran for 600,000 years. They pumped so much CO2 into the atmosphere that the planet swung violently between greenhouse warming and acid rain cooling, back and forth, over and over, with no stability in between. The oceans acidified. Oxygen levels in the water dropped. On land, the temperature swings were so extreme and so sudden that most species couldn't adapt fast enough to survive them. Around 80% of all life on Earth was erased. The crocodile-like archosaurs that had dominated the land after the Great Dying were gutted. Most of them went extinct. And in the ecological void they left behind, a group of fast, bipedal, surprisingly small creatures had been waiting. The dinosaurs had survived, and their moment had arrived.
Number 6. Hallucigenia. Scientists found the fossil and spent 15 years building it completely upside down. The spines they thought were legs were actually armor on its back. The blob they thought was its head was actually its tail. And the real head, when they finally identified it, had a circular mouth ringed with teeth that continued all the way down its throat. A throat lined with teeth. Something that looked less like an animal and more like a punishment. Hallucigenia lived 508 million years ago during the Cambrian explosion, the moment evolution stopped being cautious and started throwing everything at the wall simultaneously. This thing was roughly an inch long, walked on paired claws, had tentacles, had spines, and had a mouth inside a mouth. Paleontologists named it hallucigenia because when they first reconstructed it, hallucination was the only reasonable explanation. For decades, nobody could place it on the tree of life. It was so structurally alien, it seemed to belong to a branch of evolution with zero modern descendants. Then researchers put it under an electron microscope and found something that changed everything. Microscopic claws on its legs, structurally identical to the claws of velvet worms still crawling through tropical rainforests today. This 508 million-year-old nightmare wasn't a dead end, it was a beginning. And if the first reset had gone just 1 degree further, that entire lineage disappears from Earth's history forever. But the reset didn't finish the job, and what survived after it was far worse than anything Hallucigenia ever faced.
Number 5. Chicxulub Impactor. 66 million years ago, a rock 6 miles wide hit the shallow waters off what is now Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, traveling at 45,000 miles per hour. The impact released energy equivalent to 1 billion nuclear bombs detonating simultaneously. The rock didn't just crater the ocean floor, it vaporized it. A column of superheated rock and gas blasted through the atmosphere and into space. Then it rained back down as molten glass beads across the entire planet. every forest on Earth ignited. The sky turned orange with fire, then black with debris. Within weeks, the sunlight was gone. Photosynthesis stopped. Plants began to die. Animals that had survived the initial firestorm now faced a world with no food, no warmth, and no light for years. The temperature plummeted. The food chain collapsed from the bottom up. And 76% of all species, including every non-avian dinosaur on the planet, were wiped out. The Chicxulub crater, now buried beneath the Yucatan Peninsula, is 110 miles wide and was originally up to 20 miles deep. It's one of the most violent geological scars on the surface of this planet. But here's the detail that almost nobody talks about. The asteroid wasn't the only thing killing the dinosaurs. Something else had already been targeting them for hundreds of thousands of years before the rock ever arrived.
Number 4. Deccan Traps Lava. Before the asteroid hit, the dinosaur world was already on fire. In what is now India, a massive volcanic system called the Deccan Traps had been erupting for hundreds of thousands of years, pumping millions of cubic kilometers of lava and gas into the atmosphere. CO2 levels were climbing. Global temperatures were fluctuating. Sea levels were rising and falling unpredictably as the continents continued to drift. The ecosystems the dinosaurs depended on were already under severe stress. The Cretaceous world at its end wasn't a golden age. It was a civilization standing on cracking ground. And then the asteroid hit the fault line. What the Deccan Traps reveal is something far more disturbing than a single dramatic impact. You don't need one cataclysmic event to trigger a mass extinction. Slow, relentless environmental degradation, the kind that builds over thousands and millions of years, can push entire ecosystems to within an inch of collapse. And then all it takes is one final shock, one tipping point, one last blow to a system that's already failing. Scientists studying what's happening to Earth's ecosystems right now have a specific term for this pattern. They call it press-pulse dynamics. First, the press, slow, sustained damage. Then the pulse, sudden, final shock. The Deccan Traps were the press. Chicxulub was the pulse. And right now, in 2025, the press has been running for over 2 centuries.
Number 3. Coelacanth. In 1938, a South African museum curator named Marjorie Courtney Latimer pulled a bizarre steel blue fish out of a fisherman's hall in East London, South Africa. It was 5 feet long, had fleshy lobed fins that looked like stubby arms, and an extra tail lobe that no living fish possessed. She had no idea what it was. She brought it to a scientist named J.L.B. Smith, who took one look at it and nearly went into shock, because that fish was a coelacanth, a species the entire scientific community had classified as extinct for 66 million years. It had survived the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs. It had survived the camp eruptions. It had survived the Great Dying. It had been swimming in the deep ocean, completely unchanged, for 400 million years, while the world above it reset itself 5 times over. The coelacanth is the most concrete physical proof we have that life doesn't just survive extinction events, it hides from them. It retreats into the deep places the catastrophe can't reach, and it waits. Today, coelacanths are critically endangered, not from an asteroid, not from a supervolcano, but from deep-sea trawling and habitat destruction. A creature that outlasted 5 planetary resets is now being killed by fishing nets. That single fact says more about the 6th extinction than any graph or statistic ever could.
Number 2. Ocean dead zones. Right now, at this exact moment, sections of the world's oceans are dying in a way that geologists have seen before, in the rock layers just beneath the Great Dying Boundary. Dead zones, areas where the oxygen content of the water has dropped so low that nothing can survive in them. Not fish, not crabs, not worms, just bacteria producing hydrogen sulfide in the dark. In the 1960s, scientists had identified around 45 ocean dead zones globally. By 2008, that number had grown to over 400. Today, it exceeds 700 and growing. The Gulf of Mexico has a dead zone the size of New Jersey that forms every summer. The Baltic Sea has dead zones that have become essentially permanent. The Black Sea has areas that haven't had oxygen in decades. And the mechanism driving this is identical to what drove the oxygen loss in the Permian oceans. Warming water holds less oxygen. Agricultural runoff feeds algae blooms that consume oxygen as they die, and the deep water stagnates into a toxic layer. The same chemical signature that shows up in the rock record 252 million years ago, the boundary layer of the Great Dying, is forming again right now in the sediment at the bottom of these dead zones. Geologists call it the euxinic signal, and every year it covers more ocean floor.
Number 1. The Anthropocene boundary. Here is the only fact that matters, and it's one that no credible scientist on Earth disputes. For the first time in 4.5 billion years of planetary history, a living organism has become a geological force, not a metaphor, not an exaggeration. In the precise technical language of Earth science, human activity now operates at the same scale as the volcanic and tectonic forces that triggered all 5 previous mass extinctions. The Siberian traps changed atmospheric chemistry over 600,000 years. Industrial civilization has replicated the equivalent carbon release in approximately 200. The current species extinction rate is running between 100 and 1,000 times the natural background rate. Half of Earth's coral reefs have disappeared in the last 40 years alone, the same reefs that took millions of years to build and that support 25% of all marine life. When future geologists, if there are future geologists, drill core samples from the rock layers being deposited right now, they will find a single razor-sharp line in the sediment where thousands of species vanish simultaneously. That line already has a name: the Anthropocene boundary. Every previous mass extinction left a mark exactly like that. 5 marks, 5 resets. Each one caused by a force with no awareness of what it was doing. Magma, orbital mechanics, a rock falling from space. The 6th mark is being carved right now, by the only force in the history of this planet that actually knows it's doing it. The question the geological record can't answer, and the only one that actually matters, is whether knowing changes anything at all.
If you thought this was terrifying, you are not ready for what they found in the video on your screen. Click it right now. The truth is worse than you think.